Artyom Vlasov used to believe that doubt was a weakness only poor men could afford. When you owned companies, skyscrapers, entire districts of the city, certainty was supposed to come with the territory. Yet on that rainy evening, standing at the glass wall of his penthouse and watching the city dissolve into silver streaks below, doubt crawled into his chest and refused to leave. The problem was Lyra. She had entered his life quietly. No ambitious schemes, no dramatic entrance. A junior architect from a modest family, she had spilled coffee on his jacket at a business forum, laughed, apologized, and that was the beginning. 8 months later she lived in his penthouse, her toothbrush next to his, her laugh filling rooms that once echoed with nothing but his footsteps. She never asked about money, never pushed him to buy things, never boasted about his wealth to her friends, which, strangely, made him more suspicious. That night, his lawyer and oldest friend Pavel joined him for a drink. The rain kept them indoors, the city lights trembled beyond the windows. "You're moving fast," Pavel said, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Engagement after 8 months. Brave." Artyom smiled faintly. "When you know, you know." Pavel snorted. "That's what every fool in divorce court says." Artyom raised an eyebrow. "You suggesting something?" Pavel leaned forward. "I'm saying this. When a man has your money, love becomes complicated. You don't know what they're loving." The words were casual, almost careless, but they stayed. After Pavel left, Artyom found Lyra asleep on the couch, a book on her chest, rainlight flickering across her face. He watched her for a long time. She looked peaceful, real, and still, the thought whispered. Would she stay if I had nothing? By morning the whisper had become a decision. The clinic director owed him favors. Quiet calls were made, documents were created, a diagnosis appeared. A rare, aggressive heart condition requiring urgent surgery. When Artyom told Lyra, it happened in the kitchen while she was slicing apples. He didn't prepare the moment. He simply said, "The doctors found something wrong with my heart." The knife slipped from her hand. "What?" Her voice came out thin. "What do you mean wrong? They say it's serious." She stared at him as if he had spoken another language. You're joking." "I wish I were." She sat down heavily. Her hands trembled in her lap. "How long have you known?" "A few days." She covered her mouth. Her eyes filled. "Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged, pretending calm while his chest tightened. "I didn't want to scare you." She stood suddenly and hugged him hard, pressing her face into his chest. He felt her shaking. That night she didn't sleep. Neither did he. The next day she insisted on coming to the clinic. When the doctor, following the script, explained the situation, she listened without blinking, asking questions, taking notes, refusing to accept uncertainty. When they were alone she whispered, "We'll fix this. Whatever it takes." The hospital room was large, bright, expensive. It still felt like a cage. Lyra moved in as if it were her own home. She brought blankets, books, his favorite tea. She argued with nurses when they tried to limit visiting hours. She slept sitting up when they wouldn't give her a second bed. Artyom observed her, searching for cracks, for signs of calculation. But all he saw was fear, exhaustion, and stubborn love. When the doctor mentioned that the experimental medication was not covered by insurance, Lyra went silent. The next day she arrived without her gold bracelet, the one he had given her for their first anniversary. "I sold it," she said simply. "We don't need jewelry right now." That night, Artyom turned his face to the wall so she wouldn't see the tears he hated himself for. Days passed. Then the hospital assigned a new surgeon. Her name was Anna Lebedeva. She entered quietly, without the dramatic authority of famous specialists. Her coat was slightly worn. Her movements were precise. Her gray eyes were steady. She studied the case file carefully. "This is complex," she said at last. "But possible." Lyra jumped up. "Possible means he'll live, right?" Anna looked at her calmly. "It means I'll fight for him." Something in her voice, not false hope, not fear, just truth, made Artyom trust her. Later he learned she had grown up in an orphanage, worked nights through medical school, had no family in the city. Only the hospital. The night before surgery, Lyra held his hand in the dark. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "So am I," he admitted, and this time it was not part of the game. When they wheeled him away, She kissed his forehead as if she might never see him again. The operating room lights burned like stars. 6 hours later, the doors opened. Anna stepped out, pale and exhausted. "He survived," she said. Lyra collapsed against the wall, crying in relief. From his bed, drifting in and out of consciousness, Artyom saw it all. And finally understood. The test had already destroyed him. The first thing Artyom noticed after the operation was the sound. A slow, steady beeping that seemed to come from very far away, as if he were underwater. Then came the light, pale, blurred, painful. He tried to move and a wave of fire rolled through his chest, forcing a hoarse breath from his lips. "Easy, easy." The voice was calm, familiar. He blinked until the room came into focus. The ceiling was white. The air smelled of antiseptic and plastic. Tubes ran from his arms. Machines stood beside the bed like silent guards. Anna was there. She leaned slightly over him, studying the monitor with the same focus she had shown in the operating room, though now her face was stripped of the mask's protection. Dark shadows lay under her eyes. "You're awake," she said. "That's good. Don't try to move." He swallowed. His throat felt raw. "How long?" 6 hours. "The surgery was complicated, but we managed." He searched her eyes. "I'm alive." She allowed herself a small smile. "Very much so." A strange weight lifted from his chest. Not physical pain, but something deeper. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, Lyra was standing at the foot of the bed. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, her face pale, eyes swollen from crying. For a second she simply stared at him, as if afraid he might vanish if she moved. Then she rushed to his side and took his hand. "You're here," she whispered. "You're really here." He squeezed her fingers weakly. "I told you I wouldn't leave." Her lips trembled. "Don't joke." The days that followed blurred together in a haze of medication, pain, and half-remembered dreams. Lyra stayed almost constantly. She fed him, wiped his forehead, helped him sit up when the nurses allowed. She slept in the chair by his bed, her coat wrapped around her shoulders, her head tilted awkwardly against the wall. At night, when she finally drifted into exhausted sleep, Artyom stared at the ceiling, guilt gnawing at him. He had wanted proof. He had received it, but the cost was unbearable. Once, around 3 in the morning, he heard soft footsteps. Anna appeared at his bedside, holding his chart. "You should be sleeping," he murmured. "So should you." She checked his pulse, adjusted the drip, and remained standing there, watching the monitors. "Why do you work so much?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "If I stop, I start thinking." He studied her face. "About what?" "About everything I didn't have time to fix." He didn't press. Another night he overheard her whispering in the corridor on the phone. "No. I told them I don't need the bonus. I didn't do it for that. Yes, I know what he's worth. No, if he lives, that's enough for me." The words burned into him. On the 7th day he could no longer carry the lie. When Lyra returned from the cafeteria with coffee, he asked her to close the door and sit. "There's something I need to tell you." Her smile faded. "You're scaring me." "I should." He told her everything. From Pavel's careless words. From his doubt. From the fake diagnosis. From the test. He watched her face crumble. "You lied," she whispered. "Yes. You made me think you were dying." "Yes." Tears slid down her cheeks, but her voice stayed calm, which frightened him more. "Why?" "Because I was afraid." "Of what?" "That you loved my money more than me." She laughed. A broken, empty sound. "So you destroyed us to protect yourself." He reached for her. She pulled away. She stood, slowly removed the engagement ring, and placed it on the table. "You tested me," she said. "But you failed yourself." She left. The door closed with a soft, final sound. He never saw her again. The days after that were the hardest of his life. His body healed, but something inside him had shattered beyond repair. Only Anna remained. She visited, checked his recovery, spoke to him with quiet steadiness. One afternoon he told her the truth. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said simply, "Life already tests us enough. We shouldn't test love." Months later, Artyom walked out of the hospital into a new life. He created a foundation for children from orphanages. He named it after Anna. And every morning, When she entered his office with tired eyes and patient files, he understood. Real wealth is not what you own. It is who you become when you finally stop lying. When the hospital doors closed behind Lyra, the room seemed to shrink. The steady beep of the monitor, the whisper of the air conditioning, the distant murmur of nurses, all of it grew louder, sharper, as if the world were reminding Artyom that he was still alive while something inside him had just died. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, unable to move, unable to breathe deeply enough. Not because of the surgery. Because of what he had done. The engagement ring lay on the table beside the bed, a small circle of gold that suddenly weighed more than his entire fortune. The following days passed in slow motion. His sister came. His lawyer called. Business partners sent messages. He answered none of them. He watched the door constantly, half expecting Lyra to return, half dreading it. She never did. Recovery was physical torture and emotional ruin combined. The doctors said his heart was healing well. His conscience was not. Only Anna continued to come. She never asked about Lyra. She never mentioned the ring. She simply did her job, calmly, carefully, with that same quiet dedication that had saved his life. One evening, after the nurses left and the ward grew still, Artyom finally spoke. "Do you think some mistakes are impossible to fix?" Anna paused while adjusting his IV. "Yes." The word hit him like a verdict. He nodded. "I think I've made one of those." She looked at him, not with pity, but with understanding. "Then the only thing left is to live in a way that makes the mistake mean something." He didn't know how to answer that. Weeks later he was discharged. The city greeted him with noise, sunlight, traffic, advertisements, life in full motion. His penthouse felt like a museum of his former self, cold, vast, echoing. Lyra's things were gone. Her books, her scarf, even the coffee cups she liked. He tried to call her once. No answer. He didn't try again. He returned to work, signing contracts, approving investments, attending meetings. Everyone said he looked healthier than ever. No one knew he slept in the smallest guest bedroom because the master suite felt unbearable. Then one morning he received a letter from the orphanage where Anna had grown up. They needed funding for medical equipment. He didn't hesitate. That same week he created a foundation for children from orphanages and low-income families, for treatment, surgeries, rehabilitation. When Anna learned that he had named it after her, she was furious. "You can't do that. I already did." She stood in his office, hands clenched. "I didn't save you for recognition. I know. That's why it has your name." They worked together after that, not as billionaire and surgeon, but as two people trying to repair something broken in the world. Late evenings in the hospital cafeteria. Endless paperwork. Quiet conversations about nothing and everything. Slowly, something inside Artyom began to heal. Not because he was forgiven, but because he was finally becoming someone who deserved forgiveness. One evening, months later, they stood outside the hospital watching the sunset burn across the windows. "I used to think money was power," he said. Anna smiled softly. "And now I think power is not ruining the people who love you." She looked at him then. Really looked. And for the first time since the ring had left his hand, Artyom felt hope. "If you want, I can continue this into a full-length novel version or convert it into a YouTube script format.